Hey everybody, how's it going? This is Max with BuzzTox here. Before we get started, this episode is brought to you by Squarespace. It's an all-in-one platform to build a beautiful online presence and run your business. But I'll talk about them later. Let's get into the video. Now, this season has had very mixed reviews for a couple of reasons. For one, it's felt extremely rushed. Two, it was the character development that took place. And three, really all in all, just how it ended. And in most cases, I tend to agree. I think some plots were thrown aside, and I think the show all in all was rushed. But I think the most important aspect of this show is the character development. And I think there were many characters in this show that were misused, but the one realization I found in this season is that Jon Snow was very misused and underused. I think the producers of the show made some alterations to the plot, and all in all, it could have really affected the overall tale that was supposed to happen for Jon Snow. And I think to understand what they did wrong with Jon Snow, I think you need to first understand Jon Snow's past of who he is and what he is as a character. And the epitome of Jon is that he's fire and ice. And he's a character of perspective. We've seen him set up throughout the whole series that not only is he an illegitimate bastard, he's a legitimized Targaryen. So for many reasons, Jon is the bridge between two extremes. And that's what makes his character extremely important. First of all, Jon represents ice. And he represents death. He's part ice because he was raised as a Stark, and he identifies as a Stark. Jon was even killed and brought back to life, so he's experienced death. And he's followed by the old gods. Bran spends a lot of time looking at Jon Snow's past, and his importance in the Long Night. But another person who shows interest in Jon is the Night King, the god of death himself. And these characters share more than just ice and death. They're both made of internal fire. Jon is Targaryen, the Night King is Dragonglass, and they are externally ice. Jon identifies as a Stark, the Night King is an Iceman. And that's one chapter of Jon's story. It's Jon overcoming the sacrifice of death. And then there's the other side of the coin, fire and life, and Jon represents that as well. He is part fire. He's the blood of a Targaryen. He was followed by the Lord of Light, Melisandre. She believed in Jon. With everything. Even her visions go back to Jon Snow. She even brought him back to life. And based on Kinvara and other Red Priestesses, they've chosen Daenerys as the Lord of Light's champion. She's the mother of dragons. She represents the Lord of Light's interests.
The dragons will purify non-believers by the thousands, burning their sins and flesh away. I will summon my most eloquent priests. They will spread the word. Daenerys has been sent to lead the people against the darkness, in this war, and in the great war still to come.
And Daenerys too is interested in Jon Snow. She is in love with him. And then the other part of the story is Jon overcoming this fire. It's overcoming the infatuation of life, and that would be the love of Daenerys. And this is the most important part of Jon's character. It's that he is ice and death, fire and ice. Because it's a show about balance. The extreme of ice is the Night King, the god of death who's fascinated with Jon Snow. Jon has to overcome that with sacrifice. And then there's the Lord of Light, and that's Daenerys, who is in love with Jon, and Jon has to overcome the infatuation and love of her. And that's why balance is important. Ice brings extermination, whereas fire takes over and crushes spirit until there's no life worth living at all. Jon is an illegitimate bastard and a legitimate Targaryen. He's a member of the Night's Watch, but he's also a wildling. He's alive and he's dead. He's Stark and Targaryen. He's the old gods and the Lord of Light. Jon is an amalgamation of everything, and it creates a man of honor. And he's the one that's destined to eliminate the god of death and the Lord of Light, the Night King and Daenerys, because it's the right thing to do, creating peace between ice and fire. That's why Jon is a song of ice and fire. There will never be peace between fire and ice. A song only exists between the two in Jon Snow. So with that being said, that takes me to the first big misstep of the season, and that was having Arya kill the Night King. Because it wasn't a decision made out of logical storytelling, it was just decided because Arya was good with a dagger. She has absolutely no character development with the Night King at all. And the decision for Arya to kill the Night King was during the development of Season 7. So I believe Season 7 and Season 8 could have been handled differently to result in a show that made sense and gave Jon Snow a better send-off. And it starts with the moment everyone goes north to capture a white. I think instead of having the ice break around all of our favorite characters, having an easy escape for them to be safe from the Night King. And then just in time, the Whites come and attack. Daenerys comes to save them. I think instead the Night King should have stopped all of the Whites from attacking. And the moment Daenerys arrived with her dragon, they would attack. And it was noticeable that the Night King would want to get to Jon. And I think instead of crashing Jon into the water and just be alone with Whites, that scene served no purpose. The only purpose was to kill Benjen. What they should have done was have Jon get captured and held behind while everyone escaped. The Night King walking towards Jon, showing that he has an interest in Jon. And then Jon can call Rhaegal, or Rhaegal can come to Jon's rescue, much like how Drogon came to Daenerys' rescue in Season 5. This would be an amazing reveal that Jon is also a dragon rider, instead of making a joke about it like they did in Season 8. Another plot point that they could get out of the way is it would be great if Rhaegal, when he was rescuing Jon, he would burn the Night King with dragonfire. And that would be the realization that the Night King cannot be killed from a dragon, which would ruin all hope for the battle for Winterfell in Season 8. And those few changes would drastically affect how the battle for Winterfell will go. It'll make us believe that all hope is lost because the dragons cannot kill him. Benjen can now come south to Winterfell and defend his home, but also protect his nephew Jon from the Night King. I think it would be a lot more significant if Benjen was killed defending his home and is killed by saving Jon. And that allows Jon to finally kill the Night King. Because Jon killing the Night King does a couple things. First of all, it builds up on the last 8 seasons of setup, but it also brings more depth to the plot. It could explain that the Night King took so much interest in Jon because Jon is the prince that was promised. He's fire and ice. That's why his blood is so important. He's the prince that was promised to the Night King, and the Night King is coming south to get him. And it succeeds on another level because Jon defeats death again. He defeated death when he was murdered by members of the Night's Watch, and then he defeated the god of death, the god of ice. And after killing the god of death, it would start the next chapter, on his journey to defeat the goddess of light, and that's Daenerys. And that could have been the crux of the story. The first 3 episodes could still be dedicated to Jon defeating the Night King. Then the last 3 episodes focus on Jon defeating Daenerys. They are 2 extremes but make a peaceful song of ice and fire in Jon Snow. While the god of death leads Jon to experience loss, separation, and isolation, the god of life is totally different. He will experience love, belonging, and belief. And that would be the hardest thing that he has to overcome. Not only would he have to betray the one he loves to defeat the Lord of Light, he would have to betray himself, because he's the shield that guards the realms of men. The man who's going to bring peace to the world. And as soon as he meets Daenerys, he starts falling for her. And Jon says it himself, love is the death of duty. He believed in Daenerys with everything. Because he believed in her, he went against his family's self-interests. Because he loved Daenerys. But the most important aspect of Jon and Daenerys is he was slowly chipped away during his time with her. He was losing the most important aspects of himself, his honor. And on top of that, she's difficult to defeat because of what she represents. Jon's defeated death. He got killed and he was brought back to life. And it's the realization of how important life is to him now. There's nothing after death. With the Night King, it was easy to fight against the dead, because you support the living. But Jon against Daenerys, he had to kill his whole future life. And that's the tragedy of Jon Snow. Supporting the one he loves, he had to watch the destruction that she caused. The destruction that he supported. I think they showed a bit of it, but these scenes with Arya should have been given to Jon. Because Jon felt so bad, he should have stayed behind in King's Landing to rescue all of these civilians that Daenerys was killing. Jon got a glimpse of it, but I think it was really important to show what his support for Daenerys has caused, because it goes against everything he stands for as a character. And they did some of that with Grey Worm and the Lannister men, and I really did love this scene. But after all that, and even though he loved Daenerys, he had to still take his vow of being the shield that guards the realms of men. And even though he didn't like it, he betrayed himself, his honor, and lied to Daenerys in order to kill her. And that's what makes Jon a very unique character. He is fire. He does represent life, just like Daenerys. But what led him to be honor-bound, to be the shield that guards the realms of men, and to do what was right, that was from ice. That was how he was raised, and that's who he is. And that's why Jon is the perfect balance. It's not that he's a legitimate Targaryen, it's that he's both ice and fire. the only being in existence that's an amalgamation of two extremes. And those two extremes together create a man of honor and integrity, and they make a song of ice and fire in Jon. And after this ending, if Jon defeated the Night King and Daenerys, then I would be satisfied with him going north of the Wall, because he fulfilled his purpose. And everything that they set up in the show would actually lead somewhere. Whereas in this season, everything they set up didn't lead anywhere. Melisandre's prophecies would have meaning. Jon being brought back to life would have a purpose. And Bran going back in time to see the importance of Jon being a legitimate Targaryen would actually have significance. On top of that, Varys supporting Jon was basically useless. So all in all, Jon being brought back to life and being a legitimate Targaryen led nowhere. Instead of Varys just being killed, have him at least get Jon the Golden Company and spread word to the lords and ladies of Westeros. I think it would have so much more stakes when after Daenerys takes over the Iron Throne, Jon has the Golden Company at his back, and he still would surrender the Golden Company in order to support Daenerys. Because they were equally as powerful, Daenerys would want to share a world with Jon, unite their armies, while Tyrion is whispering in Jon's ear that she will kill him. And then that would lead Jon to killing Daenerys. And I would like to push that further. If Jon would have power of the Golden Company and they weren't just washed aside, I think it would have wrapped up Grey Worm's story well, because I didn't like how they ended it in this episode. Why does Grey Worm and the Unsullied have bargaining power if they're going to go right back to Noth? I think it would have been much more significant if Jon took the throne, claimed himself as king, and told Grey Worm to either settle lands here or leave, or there will be a fight between the Golden Company and the Unsullied. Which there should have been less Unsullied because many died at the battle for Winterfell. After Grey Worm leaves, I would have liked Jon to put down his crown, say he doesn't want it, and leave north. And then the leaders of Westeros can choose a brand new leader. Because the way it actually went, for some reason they never even mentioned Jon Snow. So Varys' ravens letting them know about Jon being a Targaryen didn't work, and nobody even brought him up at all. And I think Jon walking as a free man north would be a very satisfying ending, because his role wasn't to be king, it was to be the shield that guards the realms of men.
You said the words. I don't care about...
Hear my words, and bear witness to my vow.
To hell with all of you.
Night gathers, and now my watch begins. It shall not end until my death. I should live and die at my post.
I am the sword in the darkness,
The watcher on the walls.
The shield that guards the realms of men.
I pledge my life and honor to the Night's Watch. For this night, and all nights to come.
And that's the thing about this show, is that it's so much more than a Game of Thrones. It's a song of ice and fire, which results in the defeat of both Ice, the Night King, and Fire, Daenerys, to build a world of peace that destroys the concept of a Game of Thrones. I know I really wanted Jon to be king, but the show wrapping up with Jon as king doesn't make much sense. He represents the Weald because he is Targaryen. No matter how worthy he is for the throne, Jon's lineage and blood goes against building this better world. That's why Bran could be a good choice, but it should have been set up better. And I think that was the key issue with the show, was Jon embodied a song of ice and fire, and that was the story of the show. Jon being a Targaryen isn't important for ruling, his blood is important to bring balance. And it's the balance that Jon Snow should have brought to the show. So that's what I think about Jon Snow and what they could have done with his story. So please let me know what you think in the comment section down below. I'll be doing other character videos in the future. Now, it's time to talk about Squarespace. As I said, Squarespace is an all-in-one platform to build a strong online presence and business. The first aspect of building an online identity is getting started, and Squarespace makes it possible. You can purchase your online domain straight from Squarespace, and then you can get started. Build your website using a vast selection of modern templates that have been designed to be intuitive, efficient, and appealing. On top of that, it's important for me as a content creator to promote my personal content and maintain communications with my audience. Squarespace allows you to create background visuals to the website by adding a video of your choice, or if the background isn't enough for you, you can place videos from YouTube, Vimeo, or any other service. You can also pull content from your social media, like Twitter and Instagram, and it's flexible in any page, sidebar, or foot of your website. To try this out, go to squarespace.com for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/BuzzTox to save 10% off your first purchase. Thank you for listening, but until next time, I'll see you guys later.